Three different people call me about moving to Birmingham. One wants a first-time home around the low to mid 300s. One is a young professional who wants to be close to work, restaurants, coffee shops, and things to do. And one is a family looking for 4 bedrooms, a little bit of yard, good school options to research, activities for the kids, and a commute that doesn't take over their entire life. And if I gave all 3 of those people the exact same answer, I'd be terrible at my job, because the best place for a first-time buyer may not be the best place for a young professional, and the best place for a young professional may not be the right choice for a family with kids. So today I want to have an honest conversation with you about what I would recommend for people at different stages of their life that are looking to relocate to the Birmingham area. We're going to be talking about budget, commute, lifestyle. We're going to be talking about compromises that come with each area, and I'm also going to tell you where I would slow a buyer down even if the houses look great online. And by the end of this video, you're not only going to understand which areas or places you need to start looking at, you'll know the exact questions to ask, and you're going to uncover some different truths about the Birmingham area. So let's start with the buyer who usually feels the most pressure. This is the first-time home buyer who wants to get into the market without putting themselves into a financial hole. First-time buyer will usually tell me something like, we're looking somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000. We want something updated, we don't really want to be an hour away, and we don't have a huge renovation budget after closing. And look, that's a very reasonable buyer, but this is also where expectations and reality can start bumping into each other. Because that buyer is often comparing the price of a home in one area with the lifestyle and condition of a home in a completely different area. They may want something updated and convenient. They may want 3 beds, 2 baths, a nice neighborhood, a short commute. They may even want to stay under a certain payment. And look, all those things may be possible, but sometimes not all in the same house. And look, I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm saying it because your first home doesn't have to be your forever home. Nobody wants to be house poor. And speaking of house poor, this next part's definitely going to resonate with some of you. A lot of people tell me they're willing to buy a fixer-upper, and then they see what fixing it up actually costs. But the expensive problems are not always the ones that you notice in the listing photos. So when I'm talking with a first-time home buyer, I'm not only asking, can you afford the purchase price? Can you handle a major repair if anything comes up? And this is where a home that looks affordable can become the most expensive decision, when the buyer calculates the mortgage, but not the life around the mortgage. And this next expense is one that most buyers don't even prep for. Y'all, we're talking about closing costs. I usually tell buyers to plan around roughly 3% for closing costs as a starting point. And then there's the things that are usually a part of the mortgage payment. We're talking insurance, property taxes, and HOA fees, and then things that are outside of the mortgage payment, maintenance, utilities, and the cost of getting to work every day. So if living further out saves you money on the house, but adds a long commute, more fuel, more wear and tear on your vehicle, and less time at home, that doesn't automatically mean the further out area is a bad choice. It just means we need to have a conversation about it. Speaking of conversation, this next part's super important when we're talking about the actual area they're gonna live. Let's say a buyer is working towards the eastern side of Birmingham. I may start with Leeds or the Moody area. Those areas can make sense for somebody whose job and daily life are already connected to that side of the metro. Let's say a buyer works downtown or south of Birmingham. Calera may make sense for somebody who wants newer construction and more house for their money. And then for the buyer who wants to stay closer to the Birmingham area, Gardendale or Fultondale may be a good choice. You may not get the same amount of land or the same new construction feel, but being closer can give you easier access and more flexibility. And if a buyer wants more space and is working on the western side of Birmingham, McCalla may enter the conversation. Again, the question isn't just what's the lowest price? The question is, does the location solve the problem that this buyer actually has? And that's the same exact conversation I had with one of my clients recently. I had a relocating buyer from Texas who initially wanted to focus on Hoover and Vestavia. That made sense based on what they'd seen online, but once we actually looked at their budget and the type of home that they wanted, the numbers didn't really line up. And what they could afford in those areas was older, outdated, or needed more work than they expected. And to be honest, they didn't have another $40,000 or $50,000 sitting around to renovate the house after closing. So I told them the truth that we talked about earlier in this video. This is your starter home. It doesn't have to be your forever home. So we expanded the search to Chelsea, Alabaster, Pelham, and the Helena areas. And they ended up finding something in Chelsea. We were able to negotiate about $20,000 off the list price, and the closing costs were covered as well. The commute worked for them, the neighborhood had amenities nearby, and they didn't have to spend the first 2 years renovating every single room in the house. Now, the lesson from the story isn't that Chelsea is always better than Hoover or Vestavia. The lesson is that Chelsea gave those particular buyers a better balance between the home they wanted and the money that they actually had. The key here is the right starter home is not necessarily in the location that you pictured. It's the home that lets you move forward without putting yourself into a financial hole. Next up, we're talking about families, and this is where it gets more complicated because the location is no longer affecting just one person's routine. It affects the entire week. And look, I got a family myself, so I know this is a lot to balance. So when I'm helping families move into Birmingham, the house isn't the only part of the decision. They may want a 4-bedroom, a fenced yard, storage, school options to research. They may also want activities for the kids, nearby groceries, medical care, a manageable commute, and some sense of community. And this is where families sometimes make the biggest mistake. They count bedrooms, bathrooms, and square footage, but they don't really think through their entire week. So next up, let's talk through some different places I would recommend if a family were relocating here. Let's start with Hoover. Hoover's popular for a reason because it's got shopping, restaurants, recreation activities, established and newer neighborhoods, and a wide range of housing. The Hoover is also large and varied. The experience can change quite a bit depending on the exact part of Hoover you're considering. So the question I would ask before recommending Hoover is, are you paying for the lifestyle you actually want, or are you just paying for the name recognition? And this is where our next area is a little different. Helena has an identity. You got Old Town, Buck Creek, trails, parks, community events, and a stronger small town feel. So for a family that values community and outdoor activities, Helena can be very attractive. But what I would want to know is whether Helena actually fits their daily routine. So if one parent works downtown and another one works south of Birmingham, and let's say the kids have activities all over the place, the commute can become very frustrating. And you actually need to understand the exact location within inside of Helena, because there's traffic, train crossings, and other practical details that don't show up when you're simply just watching a neighborhood video online. So Helena can be great if your lifestyle fits it, but the commute is the part that I want you to test before you fall in love with the neighborhood. Speaking of driving, let's head all the way over to the eastern side of Birmingham. We're going to talk about Trussville next. And Trussville can make a lot of sense for families who work toward the northeast or eastern side of the metro. You've also got similar things like Hoover has: restaurants, shopping, recreation. You've got older and newer neighborhoods and a strong community identity. But larger updated homes here may come with a higher price point. So I would usually ask the family a couple questions like, do you need the extra space immediately? Are you willing to accept an older home? Would a smaller home and a better location work for you? Is the location worth choosing a higher payment over? So Trussville may be an excellent fit for the right family, but excellent fit is different from the best suburb for everybody. And speaking of suburbs, let's go check out one of the most practical suburbs in the Birmingham metro. We're talking about Pelham, Alabama. You've got access to Interstate 65 and Highway 31. You also got older homes, newer homes, townhomes, larger lots, and different price points all throughout Pelham. And you're also close enough to Hoover and Birmingham that you still got options. But Pelham may not have that same distinct identity as Helena or Trussville. It may not have the same amount of retail as Hoover, but if someone tells me we want access, space, and a location that gives us multiple options, Pelham's definitely going to be a part of that conversation. And look, Pelham may not win every single category, but it can perform well across multiple categories at once. And that's often what a family needs. And speaking of what a family needs, this next area is exactly what a lot of my families end up choosing. Alabaster. It may work well for families who want more house for their money, newer construction, shopping, restaurants, sports, and a strong community feel. But the commute question really matters here. If somebody works downtown and they drive during the busiest parts of the day, I want them to experience what that route is like before they make a decision. And a family may love the home, the yard, and the price, but if one parent loses an extra hour every single day, that affects the entire family. And that doesn't mean Alabaster is wrong. It means the buyer has to decide whether the extra space is worth the driving. And some families will say yes, others will decide that a smaller home closer to work gives them a better life. There's no universal answer. Next up is Chelsea. It's another location where the exact lifestyle matters. So for some buyers, it offers a combination of space, newer neighborhoods, access towards Highway 280, and a family-oriented feel. But traffic and the exact location within Chelsea matter. If you're commuting in one direction every single day, the neighborhood may feel different than it does on a Saturday afternoon. And if you're buying there because somebody says this is where everything's going to be in 5 years, I would slow the conversation down a little bit. I want to know whether the current lifestyle works for you while the area continues to develop. And this brings me to another story about a family that I helped move here. Their budget was around the low to mid $300,000 range. The husband worked downtown and was comfortable with up to an hour drive if the house and the community were the right fit. And his spouse was a stay-at-home mom that was homeschooling all of their children. So space was extremely important for him. But they also wanted a smaller community, opportunities to get involved, and recreation and sports for their kids. The husband was also interested in volunteering with the local fire department. They looked at places like Alabaster, Gardendale, Helena, Columbiana, Moody, Leeds, and several other areas. So if I had just handed them a list of the most popular family suburbs, I would have missed what they were actually trying to build. Once we understood the lifestyle, Springville actually started making a lot of sense to them. They actually found a newer home there, it fit their family, It gave them that community feel that they wanted. It gave them multiple opportunities to get involved, and the husband accepted the commute because the house, the price, and the community mattered more to him. Also, the builder offered a lower interest rate and covered all of their closing costs. So the point of this story is not that Springville is the answer for every family. The point is that the answer can come from understanding the family, not from handing them a generic list of suburbs. The house was part of the decision, but the life they wanted to build around the house was a bigger decision. Next up, we're talking about the young professional. They usually come to me with a little more flexibility. So if a young professional is working near downtown or UAB and wants restaurants, coffee shops, and more of an active lifestyle, I may look closer in. Places like Highland Park can offer character and convenience, but the price point may be higher. Avondale can put you closer to restaurants and entertainment, but most of the homes over there are a lot older. And with an older home, I usually want to know what's behind the cosmetic renovation. Because the kitchen may look beautiful, but how old is the roof, the HVAC? What does the electrical system look like? How's the drainage at the house? Another popular area is Irondale. It may be interesting for somebody who wants access to downtown and doesn't mind just a little short drive. And Fultondale and Gardendale, well, they may work for somebody who wants a more suburban feel while staying relatively accessible to Birmingham. But the real thing is, none of these locations are automatic answers. The house that looks cheaper on paper may not be cheaper in the way that you actually live. If you're driving over 25 minutes for dinner, the gym, groceries, and social activities, that location might not feel convenient even if the house itself is affordable. But the reverse is also true. If you work remotely and you don't really use those amenities, you may be paying a premium for convenience you don't even need. And this is also the buyer group where renting first can make a lot of sense for you. If you're not sure if you're staying in Birmingham long term, buying is not automatically the responsible choice. Because there's transaction costs to buying and selling. There's also maintenance costs, and your job may change, your relationship status may change, your preferred part of town may change once you actually live here. And if you think you might be leaving after a short period of time, I would rather see you make a thoughtful rental decision than force yourself into a purchase because somebody told you renting is throwing money away. But if you are planning to stay, then the question changes. Now we have to decide whether you're buying the lifestyle you have today or leaving room for the life you're likely to have 5 years down the road. Look, I had a young professional buyer whose job was east of Birmingham. He already knew he wanted to be on that side of the metro, and that immediately changed the conversation. Instead of putting him in an older home closer to the Birmingham area with a longer commute, we looked at Leeds and Moody. For roughly the same money, he could get a brand new house further out east. And because he had a reverse commute, the location didn't create the same daily traffic problem it would have created for somebody driving into Birmingham every single morning. And the new house also meant he wasn't immediately dealing with major system replacements. He had a newer home, a manageable commute, and a location that still connected him to the broader Birmingham metro. So for this client, the house and the location work together perfectly. That's the important part. So the best home for a young professional out there is usually not the one with the most bedrooms. It's the one that makes your daily life easier without boxing you into one version of your future. So if you're trying to figure out which part of Birmingham fits your budget, your commute, and your family, just go ahead and click the link in the description. You can set up a call with me and we can actually go through this stuff a little bit more in detail. And if you're still trying to understand the Birmingham Metro, I've also created a free Birmingham relocation guide. That link is in the description below as well. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see similar content, make sure you subscribe below and also give this video a like so it gets out to more people. And look, if there's a suburb you want me to break down honestly, including the parts that people usually leave out, drop them in the comments. Oh, and before you go, make sure you check out this video here.